Welcome to another episode of Ask Better Questions. In today's episode, I thought I'd discuss the frequent reporting of potential dystopian futures with AI and why we shouldn't fear AI or the future in general. I'll cover how we got here, why I don't fear AI and you shouldn't either, but also I'll cover what you should do to prepare, what areas AI is likely to impact on, and how the world has already changed because of AI. But before we get into the episode, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Colourful Solutions. I'm a director at Colourful Solutions, and we provide independent advice on AI implementations for business, looking to automate any business function. So if you're in the market to automate or implement AI in any of your business processes, be sure to reach out. Links are in the description. So before we start, I'd like to paint a picture. Growing up, I watched the Jetsons. The future was filled with labor-saving devices, we had flying cars, and the most menial tasks were performed by robots. Now, this all made sense in a time where robotics was the main driver futurists were talking about. It turns out that the invention of the semiconductor and prior to the invention of the transistor had a much more significant impact on the future as it played out. Now, here we are decades later, no flying cars, no robot dogs. Well, that's not entirely true, but commercially, they're not as exactly ubiquitous as we were led to believe they would be. If I were having a conversation with my younger self, I'd be saying the personal computer would be singularly the largest shaper of my future. I may also mention buying Apple and Google stock, but that aside, the computer has had a huge impact on our lives, and robotics, well, less so. But computers are technology, built on other technology, and without software, operating systems, ecosystems, and the peripheral hardware, computers are limited. In much the same way, AI is limited currently. Some people believe this is a good thing, and most of these subscribe to like a Skynet-type fear of AI, worried it may become sentient. Now, it is true that AI in some testing shows the ability to demonstrate, let's call, interesting characteristics, which through some frames appear similar in nature to sentience. And it's certainly unnerving, if not downright frightening in some regards. But it's also true that my father once showed me a program that would repeat back to a user prompts similar to a doctor questioning a patient, stuff like, so how long have you how do you feel? I feel like this. Well, how long have you been feeling like that? Oh, about. And when did this first start? And so on and so forth. Now, this was in the late 80s or early 90s. I was convinced the computer was comprehending my text. And just to be clear, it wasn't, okay? So this is not exactly passing the AI test or anything like that, but this is a very simple computer prompt program that would just repeat text back to you. It appeared sentient, it wasn't. Now, that's not to say that AI will never achieve sentience or something like that. It is potentially, I guess, theoretically possible, but at this point in time, there's no evidence of that. So why am I even mentioning it here? Well, because as significant as the advent of AI is, much like robotics, it serves a purpose only where it's useful. Okay, so it's not going to win the Super Bowl or anything like that. Unlike robotics decades ago, AI has arrived at a time when the world desperately needs solutions to problems that have largely been growing or developing for decades. Like we've got demographic decline, global warming, food security, geopolitical tensions, biodiversity loss, public health crises, most notably in 2020, economic inequality, aging populations, technological advancements that, are providing cybersecurity and privacy issues, water scarcity, education disparities, mental health issues, environmental pollution, political instability, cybersecurity threats, natural disasters, resource scarcity, migration and displacement from wars and other things, religious and ethnic tensions, human rights abuses. Look, the list continues. These are just some of the complex issues the world is grappling with, and addressing them requires international collaboration, innovative solutions, and sustained efforts. So why do I raise these issues? Well, because AI and automation are one solution to some of these issues. They're not going to solve the world's ills. That, sadly, is up to people who have been rather good at providing the world ills. As my economics lecturer once said, the first law of economics is that resources are scarce. And the first law of politics is to ignore the first law of economics. So, having said that, jokes aside, the world must embrace AI in the future if we are to, if we're not, or to avoid a decline as a species. Now, why do I say that? Well, one word, I guess, demographics. The world's population has exploded, and by all accounts, it's been an incredible time to be alive. Quality of life has increased, the world's population's exploded, but that has put an enormous strain on a lot of systems. We live in an incredibly fragile world at the moment. Many experts are actually noting that the overall populations are flattening and actually shrinking in much of the Western or First World. In a lot of places that the statistics are, let's say, rubbery, we still actually believe that overall the population of the world may actually start declining from as soon as 2024, which is less than 12 months away. So why should we care? Well, because the knowledge and skills of our older generation are leaving the workforce. They're also shifting from providers of economic value, as demographers would explain, to starting to use their wealth for consumption purposes. Healthcare is a good example. A doctor with 40 years' experience may retire and start to use the system that he helped build. For better or worse, the systems in place in much of the Western world rely on a large base of taxpayers and participants providing economic value into the economy, and a small group of people using that economic wealth in retirement. I don't mean to be harsh, but we're going to see a seismic shift here in the next 5 to 10 years where the most valuable and knowledgeable people will retire and start becoming net consumers. Now, in small numbers, this wouldn't have a big impact, but the numbers tell us that we're going to have to make some significant decisions to maintain our lifestyles and communities. We're going to suffer a long and disastrous decline in living standards. It could be a very short and disastrous decline in living standards. And with that, a decline in lifespans. Now, I, for one, like my standard of living, and I'm not particularly keen to see it decline. So why AI? Well, I was recently watching an interview with Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, the providers of ChatGPT, amongst other things. And he was saying, even 5 years ago, he thought AI would replace factory workers, truck drivers, and the last people to lose their jobs would be the creative types or the specialists like doctors or lawyers. Now, as it turns out, he went on to say it's been significantly more challenging to get AI to drive a car than it has been to get AI to create an artwork or music. I mean, there are numerous instances online, in fact, many free programs that you can go onto to create artwork. So, art, music, and the like. So whilst it's relatively easy to replace a truck driver with another truck driver, and you can train somebody up to do that rather quickly, replacing a lawyer with decades of experience or an accountant with expertise by simply training a new one doesn't really translate into reality very well. So as baby boomers leave the workforce, we need to replace their expertise, or at least cover their expertise, preserve it in some way, shape or form. And I see here an opportunity and a small window where successful businesses digitize their expertise, digitize their experiences. Already, many industries create handbooks and other similar repositories of knowledge and wisdom. But AI can take these and the entire history of legal precedent or other information and choose the relevant information and then summarize that so that even the least experienced professional can digest it. Now imagine a world where these skills are readily transferable. So you can talk to your lawyer, accountant, wealth advisor, banker, and other specialists all in the same conversation, and they can provide you with tailored and specific advice in moments without significant cost. And then you need advice for your Singapore office and your UK team, and how about your UAE branch, all of it. Same team, same turnaround. They can digest all of the information that's relevant and required and turn around and answer in moments. Now, this is both scary and exciting. If you use these services, and most businesses do, then costs will likely come down significantly. If your business is currently providing these services, then you have a window of opportunity to automate that process before your competition do. And before you argue that regulation will prevent people using AI legal services, currently no one can practice medicine without the required licenses, and yet every single doctor I know curses patients who consult Google with their symptoms. Now, as poor a doctor as Google turns out to be, there's no reason an AI-driven diagnostic system wouldn't save countless patients and lives. It hasn't yet been built, but I believe it will be, and in the not too distant future. There are already teams working on this. So the impact of these developments are twofold. First, the first world nations will benefit utilizing automation and AI-driven expertise condensed into systems that are easy to use and provide enormous benefits at greatly reduced cost. And part of that will be demographically driven. We need to replace people that cannot be replaced. But the benefits also extend to the second and even third world, where access to medical expertise will become cheap and accessible. Access to expertise on manufacturing, logistics, resource allocation, agriculture, and many other fields can be accessed simply and easily because of developments that are being driven by demographics in the first world. Now, this is incredibly powerful, as previously this sort of thought capital simply wasn't available without a huge price tag. So, in summary, the Western world is approaching a massive demographic decline, and something has to give. Now, our options are limited. We could go back in time and create more children. Now, this might prove difficult because time travel is, well, theoretical. Or we could try and fill the gaps in our labour force with migration. Now, this has been tried. It does come with a host of caveats and issues, both known and unknown. Or we could embrace AI to innovate, create expertise in the fields that we are already excelling in. I don't fear an AI-driven future. I fear a future without AI. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think our global issues will be solved. Leave me a note in the comments, and if you have questions or comments, please reach out, and the link's in the description. So if you like this podcast, leave a rating and review, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I'm Peter Adams, and I'll be here next week to ask better questions.